He's thinking in long term of the legacy.
The dynasty!
Is your highest moral compass relative?
As far as how you conduct yourself, that can differ from person to person.
It's the great irony of being a parent. Like, in order to protect them, you have to not protect them at times.
Even though it is what needs to happen, it can be intimidating.
Spooky.
When you grow up, you're gonna have to do a lot of shit you don't want to do, and that's just kind of the way it is, bud.
When you make the proper sacrifices, one of which is sticking to your principles, the future will sort itself out properly.
Sponsored by Prime Energy.
Should pedophiles be allowed to roam the streets? Sponsored by Prime. Okay.
Hey, good to go?
We are. Indeed.
All right. Happy Halloween, everybody. Jack, you're looking sharp.
You as well, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So, today we are going to be reading through the story of Abraham and Isaac. Great. And we figure that's kind of scary, you know, almost having to sacrifice your son. So
spooky.
Pretty spooky indeed. And yeah, Jack, you wanted to read this one, I believe?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Well, take it away. Oh, whenever you're ready.
Abraham is tested. So Abraham sacrifices his son Isaac. So this is a short one, so I can read it through pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll start, and then we can just go over it. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to Abraham, "Here I am." Excuse me. Okay, start over. Blank. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. And that is the story of Abraham sacrificing Isaac.
Nearly.
So, where do you want to start? What do you think? What are you thinking?
So I think the first time we went over this, we kind of missed the point a little bit as far as the sacrificing itself goes. I don't think it was meant to symbolize literally sacrificing anything in that way, as in like getting rid of it, giving it up completely. I think that it's more about the idea of specifically sacrificing the idea of keeping your son to yourself, which has kind of been a recurring theme over the last few stories that we've gone over, just kind of shielding your children too closely. You know, I think that was the biggest problem with Lot and his daughters in the cave. So I think the line specifically, "Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son," it's meant to symbolize letting your son go out into the world to be guided by God or his calling as opposed to Abraham, his father. That was kind of the takeaway that I got from it on this read through.
This go around?
Yeah. How about yourself?
I'm not going to completely release the idea of like not literally sacrificing your son, but I will say like I think you can look at this and still interpret it as a takeaway that when you adhere to your principles completely and utterly, God is pleased in a sense.
I would agree with that. I don't think that we should totally dismiss that idea.
Yeah, but I mean totally to your point as well of like, you know, trying to shield not only your son, trying to protect your future. Like when you look at children as a symbol of the future as well. Trying to protect your future is only going to restrain you and keep you out of God's content, out of God's, I don't know, but
yeah, I think I know what you're saying. It's like if you have this idea of what your future needs to be stuck in your mind, if you're not willing to give that up for what your higher self wants for you, then you could run the risk of sacrificing the potential. Well, that wording is confusing because sacrificing is ultimately what we're trying to do here, but you are potentially throwing away the potential for what your future should be as opposed to what you think it should be or want it to be.
It kind of reminds me of, you remember like the That's So Raven show?
Yeah.
And how she could see the future and see what happens. But then like every time she tried to intervene in some way, or many times she tried to intervene, she screwed it up.
Yeah, she would butterfly effect it into happening.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think in trying to protect your future so closely, you are losing your future by doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Yeah, and just on the idea of allowing your son to be guided now by his own moral compass instead of you. I think that that's something that every parent does need to do. I mean, I can't speak on that completely because I don't have a son or a kid in any capacity, but you can't act as their ruling figure forever. At some point, you are going to have to send them off into the world so that they can become their own person. And so it is extremely important for you to sacrifice them in that manner just by allowing them to be free and letting them go.
And it's interesting because Abraham, he did not hesitate in doing so. So like this is an example to try to live by as parents. Don't hesitate in letting them go out and being themselves and exploring the world. But he also, it's interesting that he lies to his servants. He says, we will go up and we will come back down together. So it's either he knew that he was going to come back down with Isaac, maybe as a man instead of a boy, or he somehow knew that this was not something that other people would be able to understand.
Could be. What was the specific line there that he said to his servants?
Let me find it. Okay, so he said to the servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you."
He said, "The boy and I will come back to you."
And then we will come back to you. Yep.
We will come back to you. Yeah. Seeing as he was going to... Is it explicitly stated that he is going to burn him on the altar after he stabs him? Because it says he gets a knife ready to stab him, right? As to sacrifice him?
God, I know this. God tells him, go to the region of Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain. I will show you.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. So it couldn't be that he was just still technically telling a half-truth and saying, like, yeah, we'll be back. He'll be a corpse, but he will be back. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Like, maybe he would still be with him in spirit or something along those lines.
I think, and I'm not sure if Jordan Peterson says this in his interpretation, but as a the fact that it's a burnt offering is interesting. Like burning away the dead wood. I know Peterson talks a lot about burning away that dead wood so that the healthy wood can reveal itself. It's interesting that he's a burnt offering and not just slaughter, cutting him and then being done with it. I think that is another indicator that this sacrifice is something that is meant to be a metaphor for allowing your child to blossom, allowing your child to burn away the dead wood, which is in part you, the parent, to a certain extent. You are the dead wood, and it's because you have put your ideas and ideologies onto them. Maybe not maliciously, but like we agree with our parents on most things. We take their worldview very often. But in it being a burnt offering, he's allowing Isaac to have his own worldview now.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like you said, we do definitely absorb a lot of our parents' ideologies. And part of becoming your own person is letting some of that go. Maybe not all of it, and not just for the sake of letting it go, but you just need to be willing to allow that to happen. Mm-hmm. You know, like you can't be so dead set on continuing to agree with everything that your parents or whatever kind of authority figures have instilled within you if you are going to actually become your own independent being operating within the world. Because you're going to be bogged down by other people's ideas.
Certainly. Mm-hmm. I think about when I read this, I've always thought about, or well, not always, but once I kind of took the interpretation that I have of this, I think of Tywin Lannister kind of. It's interesting because in a way he was willing to sacrifice his kids for his principle, or at least he was a very principled man. But at the same time, he wasn't willing to, like, he would do anything for Jaime, let's say, to keep him alive. But in some way, Tywin Lannister, to me, kind of embodied Abraham in this sense of, like, he's thinking in long term of the legacy of the name.
The dynasty
for 1,000 years. And that, he's thinking of that more so than just his children. And I wonder if that's like a good worldview to have, or a good way to conduct yourself, like when raising children, thinking of the future of maybe not even just the name, but the future of all of your children and their children's children and their children's children's children, as opposed to single-mindedly being attached to just your child.
Yeah, I would think with Tywin, I would almost think that he's most concerned about his family's impact on the world more than, you know, anything related to specifically like what happens to his kids or what his kids do specifically, but more just what is the impact of our family going to be on the world? What is the mark that they're going to leave? And I think that you could take away a little bit of that from this story, in that, like I said, you're allowing your son to go off and become his own person so that he can start molding the world around him as he sees fit. So maybe certainly in a less controlling manner than Tywin, because Tywin is very much so like, you need to do this for the sake of what I want our family's impact to be on the world, especially with regards to like how he treats Cersei. In that he is constantly marrying her off to people in the hopes of her gaining his family more power and status. You know, he's not so much letting her go off into the world and become her own person. He's kind of using her as a tool. At least that's the way it seems to me. Maybe there's some sort of a parallel there, especially with the way women are kind of treated in the Bible. Yeah. You know, like, I want this woman to be my wife. Go get her for me. Or like, hey, Ishmael, I got you a wife. I went into Egypt and I found a woman. So I brought her.
Yeah.
I just picked one out. Yeah. Went to the old wife gallery.
You raise an interesting point, though, of what Tywin wants it to be. We also have to give, maybe he's not the right way to look at this, because and the future that I want for my family may not be the future that my great-grandchild wants for his family. And I have to kind of release that and accept that also.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, he is very much concerned with a long-lasting impact within his bloodline on the world, whereas Abraham giving up Isaac is almost him releasing that control of what he might want him to do and just allowing him to go do what his God wants him to do, as opposed to Abraham and Abraham's God.
And even at the end, it says, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. And then he says, just before, your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies.
That sounds like something Tywin would like. However, yeah, it's almost like he's being rewarded for allowing Isaac to go off and become his own person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, because you have allowed him to separate himself from you as his authority figure and you are allowing him to become his own authority figure, he's going to be capable of great things. You know, he'll be able to, let's see, what chapter is this?
Abimelech seems to show up much more. It is in chapter 22.
22. I need to download a different version of the Bible onto my phone, because this one, even though it seemed like it was the most normal English, as I read through it, it's like even more confusing because it's not using that old-timey saith speak. But no, yeah, I still, yeah, I guess I just wanted to reread that what exactly God said to him about what is going to become of Isaac's nations. Mm. But no, I think that it is, like I said, just God is saying he is going to be capable of great things. That which he seeks to achieve, he'll be able to achieve because you are allowing him to be guided by me instead of you. And in our interpretation of God, it's not the same God guiding both of them. Abraham's God is his conscience. Isaac's God is his conscience. Mm-hmm. So Abraham cannot simultaneously try to continue instilling his beliefs within his son and allow him to live by his beliefs and his own principles, which might differ from his own. Mm. Hopefully they would align somewhat, because Abraham is said to be a good man who walks forthrightly with God, but there still might be some differences there between just what they think is morally the best for him.
So is your highest moral compass relative, or is there one universal moral compass that everyone should abide by?
I think that it's relative, you know, from person to person. I think there are probably some universal, values and just positive qualities that people should probably stick to. I mean, like killing without cause is that one should probably be a bit universal. Mm-hmm. But as far as how you conduct yourself, that can differ from person to person and not be wrong on either party's behalf. You know, you and I would say are not bad people, but we don't, like, neither of us are bad people, I would say. I mean, obviously I don't think I'm perfect, but we operate differently. You know, we do things differently. We are not behaving exactly the same as each other. And I'm sure that on certain issues we have different principle codes without either of us being at fault for those principle codes.
I'm trying to think of one.
Selling crack is not inherently evil, in my opinion. No. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't probably think of one off the top of my head. We would probably have to have like long discussions to figure one out. But different people have different principles, and I don't think that makes either person wrong necessarily.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Why do you think that they decided to put in Isaac saying, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Why do you think they put in Isaac questioning this? Or, he's questioning it.
It might be a little bit scary.
Spooky.
The idea, very spooky indeed, Halloween themed. But I just think in being let go from your parents' control, even though it is what needs to happen, it can be intimidating, you know, just becoming an adult and starting to operate as more of an individual unit as opposed to someone that is partially controlled and therefore protected by your family. So that might be it, you know, like you're not going to be questioning, well, where's the sacrifice? But you might just be nervous about it.
Definitely nervous about it. I mean, I know I am. Shit. But, yeah, if we say, okay, where's the lamb for the burnt offering? In essence, he's saying, where is the sacrifice? Not that we are going to actually ask that question in our everyday lives, but, like, where's the sacrifice? Like, the sacrifice itself, which is Isaac, is unaware of any sacrifice that is supposed to be there. Like, where is the sacrifice? That, to me, that just sticks with me, and I can't put a pin on why.
Well, wasn't he? I thought he was told. I thought Abraham did tell him that they were going to this place to make a sacrifice to God.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe it's almost just like you're taking baby steps in this process. You know, you're not immediately just going to, you know, figuratively throw your son from the nest, but you're going to start just kind of easing him into it, you know, little by little. You know, I don't know if you've seen the video, just a really short video of like a toddler has fallen out of his chair, and his dad his dad's sitting right next to him. The mom comes over and tries to pick the kid up and put him on the table, and the dad literally just shoos her hand away, like, no, let him do it himself.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to start off with little things like that. It's not like you're going to go from caring for your son 24/7, changing his diapers and feeding him by hand, to just, all right, bud, time to move out, start paying bills. And along that journey, your son might give a little bit of pushback, even if not intentionally, you know, just because, again, it's a little bit intimidating to think about becoming this individual as opposed to a part of this unit that is your family that's taking care of you. So you might just question it a little bit, give a little bit of pushback, even if you're not aware that you're doing that. You know, Isaac doesn't know that the idea is for him to be sacrificed. So it's not like he's saying, no, Dad, please don't. But he's just kind of like, what's going on here? Know what I mean?
Yeah, because I'm thinking it in the realm of, like, okay, let's consider my parents having to sacrifice me, or having to sacrifice keeping me as I was. Was I aware, like, ever at any point aware of them accepting that? I don't know if I was. I'd have to think about it. But maybe the point is to not, I don't know, maybe the point is to not realize that your parents are actively making that sacrifice. The point is to, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that I wasn't really aware of my parents kind of easing me into just being an adult, even though they definitely were. I mean, just as they were giving me more responsibility around the house, even, you know, like, okay, you're old enough to mow the lawn now. That's one form of that. You know, they're teaching you one way that you need to eventually take care of yourself, because eventually, if you want to have your own house, you're going to have to mow your own fucking lawn, or hire somebody to do it. But either way, it's something you're going to have to take care of. So even though as a 10-year-old I didn't realize that was, in a way, my parents starting to just kind of teach me how to operate by myself, that is, in a sense, what they were doing.
Yeah, that clarifies some things for me. Because I imagine a lot of people, like Dad making me mow the lawn. I'm like, why do I have to do this? Like, why is he making me do this? Like, I think probably a lot of kids start questioning that, of, like, throughout their life, what's the point of this sacrifice? They're not saying sacrifice in their head, but what's the point of mowing the lawn? What's the point of taking up this responsibility?
Yeah, why do I have to do this thing that I don't want to do?
Yeah.
And that's your parents just teaching you, like, A, it's just something that needs to be done, and B, even if your parents don't realize it, that is them teaching you, like, you're going to have to sacrifice your time in order to just tend to your responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And it can be frustrating as a kid, or at least confusing, because I would say Isaac doesn't seem frustrated in this story, just but confused. He is like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So, and I can relate to that, absolutely. You know, like, why the fuck do I have to mow the lawn? I don't want to mow the lawn. Well, doesn't matter. When you grow up, you're going to have to do a lot of shit you don't want to do, and that's just kind of the way it is, bud.
Yeah. And that's the idea of the smothering mother, too, of, like, if she doesn't make you mow the lawn, if she doesn't make you go out and do these things, then you're dependent on her, and that's, or him, let's say the father, certainly fathers can be capable of something like that as
Sure.
well, being codependent on their child. If you never teach them how to make these sacrifices or these responsibilities, then you can keep them, and you can keep them locked away, and you can keep them dependent on you. And that's a terrible thing to do to your children.
Yeah, absolutely, because it turns you into a man-child, which
Yeah.
is, like the least attractive thing that you can be as an adult is,
Yeah.
a fully grown infant,
Right,
essentially.
right.
Like, you're incapable of taking care of yourself. Like, your parents never taught you how to mow the lawn, how to cook, how to do your own laundry.
Yeah.
Beyond the fact that you're dependent on somebody else to do these things, just take that out of the equation. You're just incapable.
Yeah.
Which is not a good thing. Like, what the hell are you going to do if your mom just unexpectedly dies?
Yeah.
If she's the one that's been keeping you sheltered and doing all of this shit for you, and now you're 30 years old and you don't know how to wash your fucking clothes.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fucking rude wake-up call, that's for sure. Yeah. Side note, well, kind of a side note, like a C transition.
We can talk about whatever.
Cool,
Let's
yeah.
Stretch it out. This will be a fun episode.
Yeah.
We're going to do a little bit of a card game at some point, boys.
Cool.
Sponsored by Prime Energy.
Sweet. Should pedophiles be allowed to roam the streets? Sponsored by Prime. Now,
No. Unless we are allowed to club them to death as they do so.
Now, we'll tie this in somehow, but I'm thinking about, like, my parents. We've talked about this before, of like, why do I feel so safe around my uncles and the male figures in my life? And it's like, because they had such conviction and they walked with such conviction. And it's crystal clear to me, in like a romantic relationship, you need to fill that void in your female partner's life. Like, they need to feel safe around you, and like, you're going to handle everything.
Yeah, you need to provide that sense of security.
Yeah, you need to, and you can't do that if you are dependent on your parents your whole life.
If you're a man-child.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think the same goes the other way around. Different responsibilities, different specific responsibilities, but I think that, your woman needs to be, capable of providing you with some sense of security and comfort in the same way that your parents would when you were younger. And I think that's part of that evolution of just separating yourself from your parents and allowing other people to appropriately take on those certain roles.
Right.
Keyword
appropriately.
Exactly. Yeah. Not in the exact same way, but as a man, it's your responsibility to be capable of defending your female romantic partner if you're out and about walking around at nighttime. And I would say that it's, to a certain degree, your woman's responsibility to just offer you a sense of relaxation and comfort at the end of a long fucking day, in the same way that your parents might. Like, you had a bad day at school, so you come home and cry to mom. Now, don't come home and cry to your wife, but
I had a tough day, hon.
I had a tough day, I just need to be held. No, but if you've had a long, stressful day, it's nice to have somebody that you can just kind of lean on for that emotional support, like, this sucked. Give me a hug. Let's lay down and watch a movie,
And yeah, for me, and I think especially like in children, like being secure that my wife is comfortable with our child and like a very good caregiver, that security is important to me significantly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that it falls on the man to be capable of instilling strong moral values within the kids. I mean, that falls on both parents, but with specific things, like defending yourself and standing up for yourself, things that are generally considered to be more masculine, just being capable of being confrontational when appropriate, whether that's verbally or physically, or, financially providing, which I don't necessarily think is solely the man's responsibility, but I do think that it is more intrinsically the man's responsibility to just provide in that sense. You know, like if I had it my way, I would be able to just provide for the family without the wife having to work so that she could take care of the kids, because I would prefer a partner that I chose take care of our children than leave them in the hands of a daycare worker.
Sure. Oh, I'm not giving my children off to fucking random people.
No, especially, I remember a couple of years ago, I read a story about daycare that was being, I think it was beyond investigation, but there was just like a full-on lawsuit happening because one of the workers had been violating the children. And it's just like, I don't want to take that chance ever.
Nope.
Ever. Like, so I would say that I just think that it does fall on the man to provide, and I would like to embody that.
Totally. I think that also highlights the importance of like building a community, whether that's through friends or through family. Like, I intend to, when I have kids, you know, someone in my family that shares our principles and our values. If we need a babysitter or something, it goes to someone within the family or someone within my community. Because then at that point, you know, okay, we all share the same values, principles, ethics, whatever it may be. You can feel so much more at peace, like handing your children off to these people.
Yeah, knowing that they're not going to be like indoctrinated into some far leftist bullshit that seems to just be consuming fucking daycares and schools and all that shit at this point, which is because those are generally the types of people that gravitate towards those types of jobs.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would 100% agree with that it's just, I would be far more comfortable being able to rely on my community, my friends, my family for that kind of caregiving rather than pawning them off on strangers.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they are well-reviewed strangers. It's like, you're still a stranger. I don't know you.
Yep.
I don't know who you are, how you feel about certain issues, how you treat children. I don't know anything about you, so I don't want to leave something as precious to me as my offspring in your control.
Yeah. You know, I think that's, and there's certainly instances where this doesn't always pan out. Certainly, man, I'm sure there's plenty. But I think that's the importance of like Catholic school or this going in with, you know, it doesn't have to be Catholic, but keeping your children within the same religious community. But for me, it would be Catholicism. So at that point, you know, okay, the teachers, generally speaking, are Catholic. The teachers will adhere to those same values. Like, there's a center point that you can go back to. If you all believe in the Bible and what it teaches, there's that center point. I can feel better about sending my children off to that school where I know, okay, our values, our community are all in tune there.
Yeah, they at least align somewhat to a certain degree. Yeah, you were raised a certain way, you believe a certain thing, and so let me at least, I can take comfort in the fact that you are going to share this set of principles with me and my family. And I think that's healthy. And I think that just a religious institution would be a good, I don't know, example of that, just regardless of what that religion is,
right.
You know, whether it's a Catholic school or a Lutheran school
or a Hinduism school.
Yeah, fucking Hindu school, just because there is a set of moral code in place there, as opposed to sending them off to public school where God knows what any of the people that are employed there believe. I mean, that kind of goes with a religious school as well. It's not necessarily set in stone that every teacher at a Catholic school is Catholic, but it is far more likely. And even if an individual teacher isn't a Catholic at a Catholic school, the foundation of the school is still built on those principles.
Yeah, and I think, and throughout the Bible, we can talk on and on about foundation, like the proper foundation being set. I think we touched on it even in Sodom and Gomorrah, of like that city's foundation was built on sand, so it needed to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something about that foundation, man, the foundation. And Abraham is the foundation of his people, essentially. Like, that's what the foundation is. And so when you are willing to give up and sacrifice your future, your children, in the sense that we understand it now, you are building that strong foundation.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, Abraham is a good example of that just because of how frequently it mentions that, yeah, he is walking forthrightly with God, aiming properly, and doing good. And so all of the people around him can be confident in him for that reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. What else? Well, this is a little caveat. But Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram. Now, a ram in the Bible I looked up symbolizes wisdom, discernment, sacrifice, protection, and guidance.
Okay.
So they're sacrificing the symbol of wisdom and discernment. Maybe I'm looking too far into this. But that's interesting. It just stands out to me.
Yeah, well, maybe what list off all of the different symbolisms there again?
Wisdom and discernment, sacrifice, protection, and guidance.
Yeah, so, well, they're sacrificing. It is strange that so they're sacrificing both a symbol of protection and a symbol of wisdom. So he is certainly sacrificing an element of protection that he has over his son by allowing him to go out into the world and explore on his own. And I think maybe you don't necessarily have to take it into account that they are sacrificing the ram, but you could just look at the fact that he saw a ram and think, okay, this symbolizes that the decision he made here to allow his son to go off was wise. And in a way, he is still protecting him, not in the same literal sense that he would be if he was still, keeping him, let's say, locked away as his son and keeping him from the world, but he is protecting him from that potential to become the man-child that we talked about.
It's the great irony of being a parent. Like, in order to protect them, you have to not protect them at times.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, in order to protect them from becoming something terrible and useless, you have to release them and sacrifice some of that element of protection that you are able to offer them. Because at some point, you do have to just grow up and leave that protection behind that your parents are offering you. Because that's what becoming a man is, or a woman, but just an adult. You have to be able to separate yourself from that level of safety and security that is offered by living at home with your parents and being provided for. And your parents keeping that from you is the opposite of protection. It's, I think Jordan Peterson mentioned, I can't remember who this quote was from, but he mentioned this line. It's like the good mother fails.
Yeah.
Essentially, because, it ultimately it is the mother's responsibility to protect her child and to provide for and care for the child. Ultimately, your goal in the long run is to fail at that and stop doing that and release your kid into the world so that he is no longer protected. And I think there's a lot to that.
It's extraordinary that the writers of the Bible recognize this so early on. And it's extraordinary, and I think that's why the Bible is so profound and worth reading today. Even they're taking universal principle. And we'll continue to figure this out. But I think everything in the Bible is a universal principle, or every lesson that is supposed to be taken away is a universal principle that can be utilized across time. Like the fact that they knew, okay, what was going on at that time for them to recognize this? They were seeing parents that were overprotecting their children, which is interesting. It's like, I wonder, do they do that in Native American tribes? Do they do that? When did that start? Did that start 10,000 years ago? Did it start 5,000 years ago?
When did what start?
The capability of parents to overprotect their children and keep them from experiencing the world. Oh,
I'm sure that's been possible throughout time, and I think it would have been much more apparent back then, just because life was so much more dangerous. The structured society that we live in offers a lot more inherent protection than we had 2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. So, if you were not allowing your kid to become a productive member of society like that, it would have been very apparent that, like, We need as many functioning members of society as possible at our disposal right now to keep things running smoothly. That's a busted part. Like, he is strictly a
liability,
a drain on resources. He is not providing for us.
Parasite.
How the fuck did that happen? Exactly. Parasitic. How did that happen? Well, his parents never allowed him to learn how to take care of himself or do literally anything. Okay, well, there you go.
Do you think monkeys experience this, or chimpanzees experience this?
That's a good question. Or just any animals in general, you know.
Well, I picked monkeys specifically because
we evolved from them. Yeah, that just made me, and I understand your point. That made me think. Monkeys and even other animals. I wonder if that's possible. But based on their level of intelligence, I would say that it's pretty likely. I mean, I'm not too familiar with just what the, like, dominance hierarchy, or not even a dominance hierarchy, but just the utilitarian hierarchy looks like within chimpanzees. Like, how much do they split up responsibility between different members of their, whatever it's called, pack, tribe, coalition, whatever the fuck. Like how consciously are they dividing responsibility between each other? I'm not sure.
There's a Chimp Empire on Netflix. Is a good one to watch.
Chimp Empire?
Yeah, worth checking out.
Okay.
That'll probably give you some answers to that, actually.
Yeah. Every time I think of chimps, I just think about this, the documentary that I watched about I can't remember what the video is called, but it's like the most brutal chimpanzee troop that we ever encountered, or something like that. I don't know. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. Yeah, vaguely.
Like, I think that it started off. Actually, I don't even know how it started, but eventually, a few of the younger males in this troop of chimps turned on one of the other males and, like, beat him to death, and then started eating him.
Oh.
And I wonder, like, why that happened. Was it strictly a challenge of his position in the dominance hierarchy, or was it maybe because he was not pulling his weight?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe if I watched the documentary again, then I would have a better idea. It's been a while, but no, that's a good question. Like, how far back in our lineage does that go?
Yeah.
Because if it still exists within chimps now, just being able to recognize this is not a functioning member of our society, it would be reasonable to assume that before we evolved from that state, we were also able to recognize that.
Yeah. In the documentary, I believe, if I recall correctly, like, some of the chimps went out to battle with another tribe, and one of the male chimps stayed back, and so it kind of shows his status being lowered within the hierarchy because he stayed back.
Yeah.
I could be getting that wrong, but I think I've got it right. It's interesting.
And I'm sure that's something that they would have to be able to recognize. Because, I mean, just thinking, like I said, even just going back in human society, it used to be a lot less safe and cushioned for us. The same still applies for animals. You know, they're living in the jungle. So surely other members of the troop would recognize if one of their members is not cooperating in conflict with other troops of chimps.
Yeah, because I think, and maybe Joe Rogan points this out, I think Peterson even points this out pretty often, of like the alpha male isn't just a tyrant. Like, he's alpha also because he is willing to nurture other chimpanzees. He's like, he'll give them food. It's like
he's caring.
He's caring, yeah. And that increases his status, which is so interesting because I don't think that happens in any other species.
Maybe not. I'm not sure. But no, there's definitely something to that. And I mean, I think that
they make sacrifices.
They absolutely make sacrifices, even if they're not, as consciously aware of it as a human making those kinds of sacrifices. But there's definitely a parallel to be drawn between that kind of behavior and human behavior,
Yeah.
as far as, people don't respect tyrants. They fear them. You might be high up in the hierarchy if you're a tyrant, but it's not for the same reason.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like you catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
There's no longevity to it.
Exactly, yeah, because eventually some other nasty piece of work is going to overthrow you and try to rule in the same way, or the entirety of the good people are going to get fed up with your shit and overthrow you for the sake of just bettering everybody else's current condition.
Yeah. Do you think in the battle of good and evil, in a sense of like at an ethereal level, there are good people and there are bad people, or there are people that are making the world worse and there are people that are trying to make the world better? Which one do you think I don't know if wins in the end is the right way to put it, but which one will persevere? Like, or is it always a constant battle going on for eternity?
It's tough to say. I would lean towards it being an eternal battle, just because I think that even just individuals have to wrestle with that battle between good and evil within themselves, as far as just making it a point to make good decisions that are beneficial to other people, as opposed to allowing yourself to be an asshole. Like, are you going to be Cain or are you going to be Abel? Or just different comparisons like that, just for the sake of the Bible talk. But I think that is always going to be a back and forth struggle, just because internally people have good thoughts, they have bad thoughts, they have good and bad impulses. So I think that within groups of people there are always going to be both people that allow the better versions of themselves to persevere over the evil, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there really ever would be a winner between the two. Yeah. If it came down to it and I had to think who would win, I would say probably good, because part of being good is being capable of necessary confrontation. And so, it's, again, we've mentioned the warrior in the garden before, like that's a good person, somebody that's capable of fighting, but just chooses not to. If evil springs up and rears its ugly head, there are going to be good people that are capable of taking that on. And ultimately, I think that there are more people that are at least trying to do good than that are trying to do evil. Might be wrong, but that seems to be the case, in my opinion. I don't necessarily know where that opinion comes from. I'm sure you would agree. We've both encountered plenty of shit people, but, we've both also encountered plenty of good people. Thinking on my family, just as an example, I can't really think of anybody that I would consider to be just bad. Certainly there are worse eggs, but I wouldn't consider them bad eggs. I don't think I could identify anybody in my family as being truly evil.
That's interesting.
Maybe that's where my kind of take on that comes, which, it's just, I might just be lucky and I was born into a good family. I've been around people that have plenty of people that I would consider genuinely bad in their family, but that seems to be more of an exception than a rule.
Can I go on a tangent real quick?
Absolutely.
A critique I have of the Marvel films, which are many.
There are many of them.
The fucking good guys, supposed good guys, in a lot of these films are fucking things up. Thanos, now, and this is a blur, maybe it's a gray area, maybe not to most. Thanos is trying to save the universe. And there are sacrifices that, on the theme of sacrifice, there are sacrifices that have to be made. The hardest choices require the strongest will is one of the coolest villain lines of all time. Thanos was a cool-ass villain. Did you watch Infinity War?
Only once, and it's been a couple of
Okay.
years, so I don't remember the finer points.
That was a good film.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the Marvel films.
I'm not either.
Honestly,
I'm not either.
I really liked Spider-Man when I was growing up, but other than that, I mean, and then X-Men. X-Men's
cool.
also pretty cool.
I liked Infinity War, and that one stuck out to me amongst all of the others.
I do remember liking it.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was bad.
Yeah.
It's just generally speaking, if I hear about a Marvel film coming out, I'm not like, oh, hell yeah, dude, I got to see that. I think I watched those because COVID was happening.
Yeah,
I was just
yeah,
in
yeah.
the house all the fucking
right,
time.
Right. But Thanos is trying to save the universe, and the heroes stop him. Now, he might have had a warped sense of saving the universe because it requires a great many sacrifices, but it would have helped many, many millions of lives, let's say.
What was his, just before you go on, I don't mean to cut you off, what was his logic and reasoning behind his method of saving the universe? Like, why did he come to the conclusion that he had to wipe out half the population?
Because a lot of these planets were overpopulated, and there were billions of life forms that were suffering because they were overpopulated. That's like the general overarching theme.
Marvel's owned by Disney, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting that they would allow a movie that has that being a bad take as the villain's point of view.
Why do you say that?
'Cause I don't know. It just seems that, I mean, Disney seems to be a pretty left-leaning corporation. Am I off base there?
No, you're not off
I didn't
base at
think
all.
so. I'm not too ingrained into all that, so I'm not 100% clear. That just seems to be my not so informed takeaway based on some of the decisions that they've made. But I don't know, it seems very often that those are the types of people that are saying, yeah, we're overpopulated. Humans are a cancer on the planet, and
Right,
we all suck.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me.
Well, there's that, and then in the Eternals, which is like one of the more recent Marvel films, they have like fucking 60 of them now. So to say it's more recent, there's probably been 8 that have come out since then. I don't know. I haven't watched any of them. But the Eternals, it was a shit movie. It was a really bad movie. But again, there are these titans that are like creators and destroyers of worlds. I think like that are just ginormous, like much larger than planets. But part of like continuing the universe, like in order to continue the universe, they have to, for whatever the logic is, they have to destroy certain planets, and they have to destroy Earth. And the good guys stop them from destroying Earth, which, like, yeah, I get it. We wouldn't want to be destroyed. But also, it's in order to keep the greater whole continuing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like they're against making the necessary sacrifices for the greater good.
Yeah.
And they're the good guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not even familiar with that one. That
It
movie.
sucked. Don't worry about it.
Cool.
You don't need to watch it. You're not missing much.
Yeah. I would say I'm really, I don't watch a whole lot of superhero movies in general.
I don't
I did really like the Christopher Nolan Batman films, but those were mostly for the villains, like Joker, fantastic. Heath Ledger, God rest his soul. Loved that role. Bane was less compelling, but still very cool.
Tom Hardy killed it.
Tom Hardy kills fucking everything.
Yeah.
But no, I see where you're coming from in that. The good guys are actively working against making that necessary sacrifice.
They're
for the
not.
greater
They're not
good.
willing to make the immediate sacrifice for the greater good. It's ironic.
Was there evidence that Thanos was correct in his conclusion that killing half the population would save the planet?
I want to say yes. I'd have to go back and watch them. I want to say yes, though.
Okay. Because if not, then I could kind of see where it's coming from, and it would be more of that, just like, okay, well, Thanos is the, blue-haired fucking social justice warrior that's saying humans are a cancer on the planet, and then the Avengers are just like, no, asshole, like, don't kill half of the planet.
Yeah.
But if there is reason to believe that he is correct in his assumption that this will actually save the planet, then it would be very interesting that the good guys are actively working against what is best for the planet that they are allegedly trying to save.
Yeah. I know this. In the Eternals, they were in the wrong.
How is the card full?
Okay. Okie dokie.
Okie dokie then.
Okie dokie then. Well, partner, what are our takeaways from this episode, eh?
Well, I think that probably the most important takeaway we can get from this story is that it's important to release your offspring from the nest, so to speak. You know, eventually you got to teach those little chickies to fly.
Yeah. And fly from the roost, eh? And make sure that you are making proper sacrifices in your life, huh?
Both, yeah. There's a little bit of utility on Abraham there in both regards, I'd say.
Hip hip hooray.
I don't even know where to go from there. Yeah, but yeah, no, I think that ultimately the biggest stories or the biggest lessons I think that are meant to be taken away from that story are just that at a certain point, it's important that you allow your children to go off into the world and become individuals as opposed to trying to protect them forever. That's not going to be good for either of you in the long run. Even if you think that is what you want, you know, like you're, let's say, a single parent and you just don't want to lose your main companion by allowing them to go off into the world, it's not what you need to do as a parent. You know, it's not good for you to rely on that kind of relationship. You, in a sense, are not allowing yourself to be an individual if you're relying on your child to almost take on sort of a parental role in that regard. You know, if you are keeping your child overly protected for the sake of keeping them around the house, it's almost like you're relying on them.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, the opposite of the way that relationship is supposed to work.
Yeah. Cool. And to me, when you make the proper sacrifices, one of which is sticking to your principles, the future will sort itself out properly.
I would say so. Yeah. All right.